You have always relied on your mind. It is your primary tool, your shield, your defining advantage. You observe others making obvious errors, driven by raw emotion or blind impulse, and you silently congratulate yourself for being rational. You believe that because you can analyze a situation, you are immune to its traps. You think your intellect protects you from the fundamental laws of human failure. This is the first lie. Intelligence is not a guarantee of truth. It is merely a high-powered processing engine. And when that engine is hijacked by the ego, it becomes the most efficient tool for self-deception ever created. We are going to examine a very specific, deeply ingrained cognitive disease, the intelligence curse. It is the reason why highly capable individuals remain paralyzed for years. It is the reason you repeat the same structural mistakes, dressed in different contexts. While convincing yourself you are making progress, when a person of average intellect makes a mistake, the failure is obvious. They lack the mental agility to hide it. The error sits there, bare and undeniable. They are forced to look at it. They might feel the sharp sting of embarrassment, the heavy weight of inadequacy. But eventually, they adapt, because reality forces them to. But you are different. You do not accept the bare reality of failure. You possess a high IQ, and you weaponize it against your own growth. The moment you face a failure, a rejection, or a miscalculation, a sophisticated machinery activates in your brain. You do not adapt. You rationalize. You build an elaborate fortress around your ego. You use your extensive vocabulary, your grasp of logic, and your analytical speed to prove why the failure was not actually your fault. You blame the variables. You cite external conditions. You point out the systemic flaws, the incompetence of the people around you, or the extreme unpredictability of the environment. You transform a blatant failure into a logical triumph. You win the argument in your head, and in doing so, you completely lose the opportunity to evolve. This is intellectual vanity. It is the silent killer of actual growth. You prioritize being right over being better. To be better, you must first admit that you were inadequate. You must sit in the cold, uncomfortable room of your own incompetence. You must bleed a little, but your ego cannot tolerate that vulnerability. It views being wrong as an existential threat, so it hires your intellect as its defense attorney. And your intellect is an exceptional attorney. It finds the loopholes in reality. It constructs airtight alibis for your shortcomings. The timing was misaligned. They lacked the necessary bandwidth to understand the vision. The market conditions were fundamentally skewed. These are not insights, they are sedatives. You are drugging yourself with logic. You weave a narrative so dense, so perfectly structured, and peppered with objective facts that anyone listening would have to agree with you. You bully reality into a shape that is comfortable for your ego, but reality does not care about your narrative. The outcome remains exactly the same. You are exactly where you were before, stagnant. The intelligence curse creates a massive, impenetrable blind spot. Because you can explain exactly why something happened, you mistake the explanation for a solution. You think that understanding the mechanics of your failure somehow excuses you from the consequences of it. It does not. Knowing why you are trapped in a cage does not make you free, it just makes you a highly educated prisoner. And the most tragic part of this dynamic is that you built the cage yourself, using your own brilliance. You use your cognitive horsepower to dig yourself deeper into the trench, all while convincing yourself you are climbing a mountain. Let us look closely at how this mechanism operates in real time. Think of the last time you abandoned a project or the last time a relationship decayed. Did you ruthlessly examine your own flaws, or did you dissect the situation until you found a variable that absolved you of responsibility? You are a master of deflection. You use nuance to hide from accountability. If someone criticizes your actions, you do not listen to the core of their feedback. Instead, you attack the delivery of the feedback. You find a minor logical inconsistency in their argument, and you use it to invalidate their entire point. You win the debate, you protect the fortress, but you remain isolated, you remain entirely unchanged. Consider the anatomy of a rationalization. It always starts with a grain of truth. That is what makes it so incredibly dangerous. If you simply lied to yourself, the cognitive dissonance would be too loud. It would be easy to detect. But your intellect uses real, verified data. It takes factual elements of the situation and arranges them in a specific, curated order. An order designed entirely to clear your name. You are technically correct in your observations. Yes, the market was volatile. Yes, your colleague was inefficient. Yes, the circumstances were suboptimal. But you focus entirely on the external variables to avoid looking at the internal constant. The internal constant is you. You are the common denominator in all of your sophisticated failures. But your intellect refuses to process this specific variable. It creates a deliberate blind spot, because if you accept that you are the problem, the entire foundation of your identity crumbles. Your identity is built on being the sharpest person in the room, the one who sees things clearly, the one who is always a step ahead, but true clarity requires the willingness to see yourself as a fool, to see your actions as clumsy, misguided, and weak, to accept that your brilliant mind is capable of deep, embarrassing incompetence. Without this acceptance, there is no self-correction. There is only a continuous, exhausting loop of justification. You become a highly articulate spectator of your own life. You can provide a flawless, real-time commentary on exactly why you are not moving forward. But you are still not moving. This intellectual vanity is a parasite. It feeds on your potential. It consumes the exact energy that should be used for action and converts it into complex theories of why action is currently impossible. It makes you passive. Under the disguise of being analytical, you are waiting for the perfect conditions, the flawless variables that your mind demands before it risks failure again. But perfect conditions do not exist, and your intellect knows this. It uses the demand for perfection as a permanent, logical excuse for inaction. Let us observe the daily execution of this curse. You do not only use this machinery in the aftermath of a massive failure, you use it in the microscopic moments of your daily existence. It infects your decisions, your interactions, and your perception of time. Watch how this intellect operates when confronted by another human being, when a colleague, a partner, or a friend points out a flaw in your behavior, what is your immediate reflex? You do not absorb the core of their grievance. You do not sit with the uncomfortable truth that you caused friction. Instead, you initiate semantic warfare. You listen to their complaint, not to understand, but to dismantle. You scan their sentence structure for logical inconsistencies. You latch onto a poorly chosen word, an exaggerated timeline, or a slight misrepresentation of facts. And then you strike. You redirect the entire conflict away from your behavior and onto their flawed presentation of it. "I never said exactly that," you reply. You are conflating two entirely separate issues. Your timeline is inaccurate. You use your cognitive precision to surgically dismantle their argument. You force them to defend their phrasing, effectively neutralizing their original complaint. You win the debate. You emerge victorious, your logic unassailable, your ego perfectly intact. And you remain completely alone. You have won the argument, but you have destroyed the connection. People learn very quickly that bringing an issue to you is an exhausting, impossible task. You are impenetrable. You are a fortress of technicalities. They stop trying to give you feedback. They retreat into silence, and your intellect interprets their silence as agreement. You assume you have resolved the issue, completely blind to the reality that you have simply trained the people around you to stop caring about your evolution. This is the profound isolation of the highly intelligent ego. You build a wall of undeniable logic, and then you quietly wonder why it feels so cold inside. This same mechanism paralyzes your relationship with time and action. It creates a specific psychological trap: procrastination, disguised as preparation. A person of average intelligence might procrastinate by simply indulging in distraction. They know they are wasting time. The guilt is straightforward, but your intellect cannot tolerate the crude, embarrassing reality of being lazy or afraid. So it cloaks your hesitation in a suit of extreme competence. It rebrands your fear of starting as gathering data. You do not begin the work. Instead, you research. You optimize your workflow. You read endlessly about the theoretical applications of the task. You build intricate systems to manage the project you have not yet started. You convince yourself that you are being strategic. You are mapping the terrain. You are anticipating the variables. You are lying. You are using information gathering as a sophisticated stalling tactic. You are terrified of the moment, when the theory must become practice, because in the realm of theory, you are a master. In the realm of abstract thought, your intellect is supreme. Nothing can go wrong. Everything is under control. But the moment you take physical action, you are subjected to the unpredictable, clumsy, and often humiliating laws of physical reality. You might fail. You might produce something mediocre. And for the intellectual vanity, mediocrity is worse than death. Being a beginner is intolerable. Being a beginner means you are not the smartest person in the room. It means you are clumsy. It means your actions will not match the flawless image in your head. So you stay in the preparation phase forever. You become a permanent student of a game you never actually play. Your mind rationalizes this perpetual delay by pointing to the complexity of the task. It requires more nuance, you tell yourself. The foundation must be perfect before execution. This is the intelligence curse whispering in your ear, ensuring you never risk your fragile ego. And when the pressure of this stagnation finally becomes too heavy to ignore, your brain executes its most brilliant maneuver yet. The counterfeit pivot. You realize that your current path is leading to an undeniable, unrationalizable failure. The deadline is approaching, or the relationship is unsalvageable. The bare reality is about to expose you. Instead of facing this exposure, you suddenly change direction entirely. You abandon the project, you leave the relationship, but you do not frame it as a retreat. Your intellect works overtime to frame it as a strategic realignment. My interests have evolved, you claim. The industry is shifting, and I must adapt. This environment is no longer conducive to my intellectual trajectory. You formulate a deeply logical, articulate reason for quitting. Just seconds before you are exposed as a failure, you pivot laterally, moving to a new domain, a new project, or a new social circle, carrying the exact same unexamined flaws with you. You mistake movement for progress. You think that because you have changed the scenery, you have changed yourself, but the architect of your misery came with you. You have simply found a new, pristine environment to slowly infect with your intellectual vanity. You are a tourist in your own potential, constantly moving from one theoretical ambition to another, leaving a trail of perfectly rationalized, half-finished lives behind you. You never stay long enough to let the environment break you down. You never stay long enough to be humbled. And without humility, the intellect is just a very sharp knife that you are slowly turning inward. There comes a moment, a very specific, unavoidable intersection. In the timeline of every highly intelligent, deeply rationalizing individual, it is the collapse, the silent breakdown. You can outsmart your peers. You can outtalk your critics. You can weave a narrative so intricate that reality itself seems to bend to your vocabulary. But you cannot outsmart the accumulation of time. Time is the one metric your intellect cannot manipulate. Eventually, the gap between your theoretical brilliance and your physical reality becomes too wide to bridge with words. The excuses expire, the strategic realignments start to look like an undeniable pattern of chronic abandonment. The people you alienated with your semantic warfare are simply gone. You find yourself sitting alone in a room, and for the first time, the cognitive machinery stalls. The engine fails to turn over. The defense attorney in your head is suddenly quiet, staring at a mountain of evidence that can no longer be suppressed or spun into a victory. You look at your life. You look at the projects that never launched because the conditions were never perfect. You look at the relationships that withered because you refused to be wrong. You look at the years you spent analyzing the water instead of learning how to swim. And the terrifying, icy realization washes over you. You are the sole architect of your own stagnation. This is not a dramatic cinematic moment. You do not scream. You do not cry. True realization for the intellectual ego is much colder than that. It is a quiet, nauseating drop in the pit of your stomach. It is the sudden, horrifying clarity that your greatest asset has been your greatest liability. You realize that while you were busy being right, other people you secretly considered less capable, less analytical, less nuanced, were out there being effective. They were taking action. They were looking foolish. They were making crude, unrefined mistakes. But through those crude mistakes, they were gathering the exact empirical data that you were too afraid to collect. They were making the clumsy, embarrassing missteps that you spent all your cognitive energy avoiding. They were being broken down by the friction of the real world, and then rebuilt by it. They adapted. While they were building actual resilience, you were just building a larger vocabulary. They moved forward. You just grew more articulate about why you were standing still in this moment of silent breakdown. The intelligence curse reveals its ultimate cruelty. It shows you the exact price of your vanity. It shows you that brilliance without vulnerability is just a highly decorated tomb. Your mind will instinctively panic. It will desperately try to reboot the defense system. It will frantically search for a new variable to blame, a new philosophical framework. To excuse this sudden feeling of profound emptiness, it will try to convince you that this dark realization itself is just another layer of deep, existential understanding. Just another badge of your superior perception. Do not let it. If you let the machinery restart now, you will lose the only genuine window of opportunity you have had in years. This pain. This acute humiliation of realizing you have wasted your own potential is not a problem to be solved. It is the cure. It is the only force strong enough to shatter the fortress of logic. You have spent your life building. To dismantle the curse, you must stay in this uncomfortable room. You must refuse the anesthetic of rationalization. When the voice in your head tries to offer a complex excuse for your failure, you must forcefully silence it. You must practice the discipline of saying, "I was wrong. I was afraid. I was inadequate." And you must stop there. No commas. No mitigating factors, no contextual clauses, just the bare, sterile fact of your own failure. Without the padding of context, without the soft landing of an external variable. You must look at the wreckage of your own choices and own it entirely. You must become completely intolerant of your own excuses, no matter how logically sound they appear to be. Because a logical excuse is still a mechanism of avoidance. It is still a refusal to bear the weight of consequence. It will feel unnatural. It will feel like an amputation. Your ego will scream that you are being unfair to yourself, that you are ignoring the nuance of the situation. Let it scream. The nuance is what poisoned you in the first place. You do not need nuance right now. You need blunt force trauma to the ego. You must understand that the desire to protect your self-image is the exact mechanism that is destroying your actual self. The person you think you are, the sharp, intellectual powerhouse, is a fiction. It is a character you play to avoid the messy, humiliating reality of being a flawed human being. Trying to navigate an indifferent world, you must let that character die. You must mourn the loss of your own perceived perfection. This is not about self-flagellation. It is about alignment. It is about finally bringing your internal narrative into perfect alignment with objective reality. Until those two things match, any action you take is just a phantom movement. The breakdown of the intellectual ego is a necessary demolition. You cannot build a functional structure on a foundation of sophisticated lies. The old architecture must be leveled completely. You are standing in the wreckage of your own vanity. The fortress of logic is gone. You are exposed to the elements, and it is freezing. For the first time in your life, you do not have a sophisticated narrative to keep you warm. You have only the stark, undeniable metrics of your actual existence, the things you did and the things you did not do. This is the cold integration. This is where the theoretical mind must submit to the brutal mechanics of reality. You must unlearn the habit of being the smartest person in the room. In fact, you must actively seek out the rooms where your intellect is useless. Where only raw execution matters, you must adopt a new baseline from this moment forward. Your intelligence is no longer allowed to be a defense mechanism. It is no longer a shield. It is strictly an operational tool. You are only allowed to use it to solve the problem in front of you. Never to excuse why the problem exists. When you fail, and you will fail, clumsily and publicly, you must practice a new kind of silence. You will feel the sudden, desperate urge to explain. The pressure will build in your chest. Your brain will rapidly generate a perfectly logical defense of your actions. It will hand you the script. You will not read it. You will close your mouth. You will look at the failure and you will simply say, "I was incorrect. The flaw was mine." No context, no systemic blame, no external variables. Just the raw, unedited acceptance of your own inadequacy. Do you understand how terrifying that is? To the ego? It is a starvation diet, and you must starve the intellectual ego until it is too weak to control your hands. You must fall in love with the friction of being a beginner. You must accept that a crude, imperfect action executed in the physical world is infinitely more valuable than a flawless theory locked inside your head. You have lived under the delusion that the world is fascinated by your potential. It is not. The world is entirely indifferent to your internal complexity. It only interacts with your external output. You have hoarded your intelligence, like a dragon hoarding gold in a cave, convinced that possessing it is the same as spending it. But potential is just a ghost. It does not exist until it is forced into a physical shape. Your high IQ is completely irrelevant to the physics of moving an object from point A to point B. It is irrelevant to the messy, uncomfortable work of maintaining a human connection. It is irrelevant to the raw discipline required to finish a task when the initial excitement evaporates. You have treated your intellect as a substitute for character, but character is built in the exact places where intellect fails. Character is forged in the humiliating realization that you do not know what you are doing and you must do it anyway. It is built in the willingness to look foolish. You have spent your entire life avoiding looking foolish, and that avoidance has made you obsolete. You must kill the identity of the smart person. It is a useless metric. It is a heavy, ornate costume that prevents you from running. Strip it off. Become obsessed with the mechanics of reality. Study the cause and effect of your actions without the filter of your own vanity. If you speak and people turn away, do not analyze their lack of comprehension. Analyze your lack of resonance. If you build something and it shatters, Do not write a thesis on the structural integrity of the materials. Sweep up the glass and build it again, differently. This is the only way out of the intelligence curse. You must trade the warmth of being right for the cold, sterile air of being effective. You will no longer be the master of the theoretical realm. You will become a clumsy, bruised participant in the physical one. You will lose arguments, you will be misunderstood, you will look at your own work and feel a deep, agonizing sense of aesthetic disgust. Good, that disgust is the first honest emotion you have felt in years. It is the compass pointing towards actual evolution. You are no longer a spectator, providing brilliant commentary on your own paralysis. You are in the arena. And the arena does not care about your vocabulary. The excuses are exhausted. The fortress is dismantled. There is nothing left to analyze. The only thing left is the silent, heavy work of becoming what you previously only theorized.